The people rioting in Washington, D.C. today. Fuck them. The people rioting in Washington, D.C. today. Fuck them. The people rioting in Washington, D.C. today. Those people stood by in their comfortable homes while Jeff Sessions and the Trump administration separated children from parents at the border and detained children. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, the people that want 4 more years of Trump and demand 4 more years of Trump, the same people that under the Trump administration abided by child separation policies, to those people, fuck you. To the people in Washington, D.C. today protesting the American democracy and the transition of power. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, protesting. You stood by as your president tortured children at the border. And then you followed your dumb little conspiracy theories about liberals and child sex trafficking, while the man that you supported in the Oval Office intentionally tortured children at our border. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you. Soon as Trump was in office, he issued an executive order that dismantled the Bears Ears National Monument, which was a monument to protect the archaeological sites and the sacred sites of many indigenous people. Soon as Trump was in office, he auctioned that off to private mining companies. To the people that are protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you! I don't want you in my life. I don't want you anywhere near me. You want to oppose the transition of power, the democratically elected transition of power? Is it that you can't fathom that the majority of Americans find Trump disgusting? You can't fathom that. You want 4 more years of child torture due to maligned immigration policies. How convenient. You want 4 more years of that? Fuck you! You want to protest a democratic process because it doesn't favor you. Well, fuck you! You remember when under the Obama administration, and I'm no Obama apologist, I did not like what happened at Standing Rock under the Obama administration. But when Trump was in office, he rescinded the protections that the Obama administration put to stop the pipeline or to pause it or to slow it down. Trump undid that, happily so, as a form of dominance, as a form of white supremacist dominance. That has been the Trump administration. And Trump's policies are reflective of white supremacist policies. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you! I don't want 4 more years of your primate moron. If I have 4 more years of your primate moron, you're going to find an enemy. And this enemy is going to be a lot fucking smarter than you. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, you have shown the American electorate that you do not like the democratic process. Your support of a Republican president shows me that you do not want equality for all people. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you! You can take your white supremacist president and you can go the fuck home. And if you can continue to insist in the ways of white supremacy, then you will have an enemy out of me. And you don't want an enemy out of me. I don't want to be an enemy to anybody. And I don't live my life to create enemies. I live my life to create bridges. But today, for today, to the people protesting in Washington, D.C., fuck you! For all I care, to the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, you can go back home and you can sit on your little fat ass until you figure out a way to make this world better. Because I have spent 44 years of my life trying to make this world a better place. It hasn't been easy. It's not comfortable. It means I am alienated from the political process. It means I am disenfranchised from the political process. You see, I expect that if I want to affect better change in this world, I will be alienated from the political process. I accept that as a badge of courage. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you! I do not want 4 more years of your politic. This nation has elected to put that politic behind us. And now you stand in protest to the democratic process, a process that seeks to overcome, in some small way, the white supremacy of the Trump administration. And you protest. To the protesters in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you! You want to undermine the good things that we have built as Americans. You want to throw all of that away because you're little mindless zealots. You'll take whatever the institution of your choosing hands to you, like little nuggets of food, even though it is junk, and you take it and you value it as precious, and you take to the halls of Congress and you protest the transition of power. You protest that a majority of Americans have said we do not want more of a white supremacist Trump presidency. You protest that. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you. You can go back home and you can be maligned, you can be mad, you can feel disenfranchised. Join the club, brothers and sisters. But to take a stand in defense of 4 years of policies that have exhibited nothing but white supremacist privilege, fuck you! We don't want that shit. I don't want that shit. And I will oppose that shit. I have been opposing that shit. You want to give me 4 more years of that shit. That's why you protest. Well, fuck you. The world is not perfect. It will never be perfect. There is no such thing as perfection. Perfection is a flawed ideology, like individualism. We have the system that we have. We are fortunate in the sense that this system can be changed. The system that we have in the form of our governments, our economic systems, they are all flawed. They are all broken. These institutions should crash. But I I pay attention and I see the decisions that people make around me, in my city, in my state, in my nation. I have been disgruntled about the American process for most of my life because I see the inequality underneath the mask of equality. I see the injustice underneath the mask of justice. I take pride in being alienated from such a political process. I support a revolution to overturn the broken institutions of our past that have brought us to this point. But I do not support the perpetuity of colonization and white supremacy. That is what the Trump administration is. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you. You can go home. It's not the fact that you're protesting, it's what you're protesting for. I support the right of protesters. I support freedom of speech. But how is it with speech that our speech is free when we are not choose to think as we desire? How is it that we are not free to think as we desire? We are imposed. We have institutional systems of enculturation imposed upon us. Public education. Some ways this is good, some ways this is bad. Religious education, political education, academia. These things have good attributes, but they also have bad attributes. And when we can't change them and get rid of the bad attributes and improve upon the good attributes, when we can't do this, we start developing destructive institutions that feed us and educate us institutional lines of thought. To the protesters in Washington, D.C. today, who think they are protesting a flawed democratic process, these protesters have allowed their egos to get in the way of a broader vision of humanity. And it's no surprise, because their elected leader, Donald Trump, does the exact same thing. The people protesting in Washington, D.C. today are egomaniacs. They cannot see beyond the immediate needs of themselves. That worldview that is so centered upon the ego is very narrow. It seeks self-centered ends. It does not recognize or empathize with an administration that would weaponize the immigration system and separate children from parents and torture children. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, you're institutionalized zealots. You've lost touch with your own humanity and the humanity of other people, especially those that might look different than you. For decades, the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today have eaten the shit of their own talking points. The anti-liberal commentary. Blame everything on liberals. It's always the liberals' fault. That is such a stupid line of reasoning. It's no wonder that it bred generations of Trump supporters. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you. I want nothing to do with you. I want your politics out of this country. And I'm no fan of the American democracy. It has its problems. I am a fan of trying to work to improve things. Shutting down the democratic process, especially when it overturns the administration of a white supremacist, shutting that down, that's just authoritarianism. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. that are authoritarians, fuck you. It's quiet in here. There's no media frenzy. I've heard some of the comments today on social commentary about how the media drives people into a frenzy. That is such a misunderstood construct. It precludes confirmation bias. You see, when people say, oh, the media drives people into a frenzy, it conveniently overlooks the fact that people have a choice in what they choose to watch. If people don't know that they have a choice, if they are instinctively going to the same media sources over and over and over again, why, this is called teleconditioning. This is a conditioned behavior. This exists because we have a free market media system. And these free market media systems employ theories in psychology, all these other elements in order to devise programming that will attract viewers. So when people bitch about the media, they're bitching about a free market system. And if you're a conservative bitching about the media, you're bitching about a free market system. So shut the fuck up. If you're going to talk about supporting a free market system, then the media is the system that you should be supporting. Okay, if you don't like that, you should be supporting public media. Publicly funded media will provide media content that is not weaponized for viewership. You see, most of you moron conservatives out there complaining about NPR, National Public Radio, the liberal radio station. No, that is publicly funded radio. It is public funded radio because it is boring. Many of you think NPR is boring. Well, it's publicly funded, which means that they can take time to do in-depth storytelling and not have to weaponize the media so that they're constantly trying to get your attention, right? Fox News, CNN, all these other media agencies, that's what they do. They are free market systems using free market tactics in order to attract the most viewers. It blows my mind when people complain about the media. The people protesting in Washington, D.C. today complain about the media. They complain about fake news. Well, fuck you. The people protesting in Washington, D.C. today are mindless zealots. They have sacrificed their cognitive enhanced executive functions that are necessary for rational decision making. They have fed on a garbage line of fake news. Isn't that funny? The president constantly promoting fake news is the leading creator and producer of fake news. And the president and his QAnon supporters using conspiracies of child sex trafficking. That same president employed a weaponized immigration system in order to intentionally torture children. Everything the Trump administration is against is what he is doing. That has been Trump from the beginning. This is because Trump is a salesman. The people protesting in Washington today support a salesman. They support a salesman and they buy his sale hook, line, and sinker. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you. I want nothing to do with you or your president. He can go home on the 20th, and if I'd never see him again, I'll be happy about that. The people supporting him, you come back to my community, and I will serve you, and I will serve alongside of you. But you start rearing that ugly ideological head of yours, and I'm going to teach you a few lessons. Not physically, not violently, but with my heart, mind, and soul. Frankly, it's not surprising that there are people protesting in Washington, D.C. today. There has been a strong bent in authoritarianism in the Republican Party for a long time, beginning with the war on drugs prior to that. But in the modern generational context, we can look at the war on drugs as the new Jim Crow, as the new form of institutional discrimination. And Republicans have refused to change it for 50 years. These are the same people protesting in Washington, D.C. right now. To the people protesting in Washington, D.C. right now, fuck you. Now, I am one where I will burn a bridge if I need to. I have no problem burning bridges when I need to. It's very freeing. It helps us move forward. And when I see the people protesting in Washington, D.C., I see bridges that maybe should be burned. Maybe it's time. What does that look like? I don't know, because there are racists in every state. But to defend white supremacy, the kind that has been exhibited by the Trump administration, to defend this and to protest when a democratic process tries to put that behind us, fuck you. Fuck all of you. I want nothing to do with it. I will fight it like I have the last, I don't know how many years of my life. And I will continue to be disenfranchised, and I will be proud of it. I have never have I seen such ignorance and self-centeredness and self-loathing embodied in a political movement like I have under the Trump administration and his army of white supremacist supporters. I think we all needed to be we all needed to be reminded that white supremacy is still alive in the United States. But now the white supremacists are threatening to hijack our democracy. To the white supremacists protesting in Washington, D.C. today, fuck you.